So, I want to talk to you about custom Lightning components error handling. It's such a great title, okay? I'm really, really sorry. I really struggled to find an interesting way of saying it. So what I did was to come up with a really clever way of, as it's still 31st of January, let's do a Happy New Year for the last possible time. And then in doing that, I had a brainwave. I could have called it Essential 8 Lessons for Error Handling, if only I thought it was sooner. So my name's Richard Clark. I'm a head of Salesforce engineering at Provar. It's a test automation company. I'll talk more about it in a second, but not for too long a noop, don't worry. My role at Provar is to work with people at Salesforce and the Salesforce ecosystem, the partners and the customers, and work on our roadmap for supporting test automation of Salesforce. So that includes both accelerating new development to make sure we're keeping up with all the Salesforce releases. It also includes being the Salesforce subject matter expert in Provar when people say, customers doing this, is this normal? Is this common? Do people normally put Anchor inside Lightning and expect it to work? So questions like that. So I've been using Salesforce, well, it's over 10 years now, but I'm now rounding down instead of rounding up. I've spoken at Dreamforce, put apps on the App Exchange, I've put ISV apps together. I've been in both the product and the SI side and end customers. So I think I've done quite a lot, and it's surprising how much I still have to learn. I'm also one of the co-organisers of this meetup group. Apologies if some of you didn't see me last year, I was quite busy. So you'll see more of me this year. So a quick word about Provar. Provar is the only automated test tool for Salesforce. Now, the Advertising Standards Authority will lynch me for saying that. What I mean by only is we're the only tool that's clicks, not code, that runs both UI, API tests together, that's fully aligned to the Salesforce roadmap, not focusing on all the possible tools out there. And with very maintainable test cases. If you want to know more, grab one of my colleagues in the blue shirts today, or go to the website and book yourself a demo or a trial. See, not too bad. References. Sorry, it's a bit light there, but don't normally get references at the start. The whole point of this talk is, in my role at Provar, one of the things I was asked to do was to improve our handling of custom Lightning components. So you build a flexi page, great, we can test it. But people were writing lots and lots of their own Lightning components. And what I wanted was some examples. So I thought, this is easy. I'll just go on Trailhead. I'll go on Developer Force. I'll just grab all the examples and put them in our org, which worked well for the happy day scenario. But when you're dealing with testers, of course, they found loads of problems in all those examples. They found that you could submit records which required fields in. So I looked deeper, and that's what led me on this journey. And this is probably the last 13, 14 from my history in Google Chrome, from when I was trying to find out, well, how do I do it properly? And not one article I looked at gave me a single answer for how to do this. So that's why I ended up putting the talk together. Okay? The items in blue, worth a read maybe, but the items in green, the presentation will be shared, are the ones that were actually useful. There weren't many. What I found was I was crawling down this rabbit hole, getting deeper and deeper like Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to avoid you taking that route, struggling along that tunnel, so we can all get to the Wonderland together. And I don't work for Salesforce. To kick off, lesson 1, debugging. I recommend everyone, if you don't know anything about debugging in JavaScript, watch Todd's talk from London Calling last year. So the browser dev tool, debugging like a unicorn, ninja, cat, rockstar. 3 reasons. 1, it's hilarious. 2, it's really embarrassing for Todd. And 3, there's lots of good nuggets in there, stuff that you'll learn and you won't forget. The third one's probably the most important, the whole point of the presentation, so thank you, Todd. I also found the debugger keyword. So how many people in the room have written JavaScript before? Really? Only less than half? How many people have written Lightning components? Even if it's just on Trailhead, that's more, that's weird. And keep your hands up if you consider yourself an expert in Lightning components. Damn it, I was hoping there was going to be one. I'm in the clear. So the debugger keyword is really, you can put that in your JavaScript. If you're running the Chrome dev tools, it will stop at that point so you can see the source code where you are. It's a lifesaver. Save you hours just putting that in. There are other ways to do it. You can open source, and I'll show some of those things today. But if you don't know, if you're new to it, it's a great thing to know. Just take it out before you put it live. Lightning Chrome extension. If you do any of the Lightning tutorials on Trailhead, they tell you about installing the Lightning Chrome extension. It took me a while before I saw the point of it, because only halfway through his talk did I get to the point where actually it's a lifesaver. So I'll be demoing that again as well today. So if you haven't installed that and you're working in Lightning, recommend you do that. The fourth one that Salesforce recommend, which is the enable debug mode for Lightning components, I actually keep this switched off, because if it's jumping into Salesforce code and it's minified, I know I don't want to look there as an amateur. I just step back out and go, whoa, no, I don't want to touch that stuff. I'm not even going to try and understand what they're doing. Okay? But take your choice. You might like it. And finally, the other really, really annoying thing about Lightning is since summer 17, when things started to speed up, a lot more caching's going on. So if you are changing your Lightning components on the fly, you're not always seeing what you think you're seeing. So refresh, or put something in your component, change the actual markup, and generally the cache is stale and it will reload quicker. So I just put a version number in my pages.
There is a real little trick for that. You can delete the database in the database tab in Chrome DevTools. You can delete the actual database that has caching in it and it has no more effects, and it just refreshes perfectly and rebuilds the database.
Oh, there you go. I was blaming Salesforce, but it's Chrome DevTools doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. So here's a question for you again. So I've got two Lightning input statements here. Don't be scared. The first one is just for a first name field on the contact record using Lightning Data Service. It's got required equals true. The second one's similar. It's a phone number. It's got regular expression, but it's still got required, and it's got a pattern there. So hands up if you think, and when I say enforce, I mean you can't save a record. Who thinks that's going to stop you saving a record without either a first name or a phone number? Anyone? You must all be experts then, or no one wants to put their hands up.
The first or the second?
Which one? Either?
The first one will stop because it's using the new Lightning. No, it's not. It's just Lightning input. It's not using the new Lightning data service.
It uses an LDS, but it's not using a Lightning input field. Okay. So the answer is neither of them. So when you, in your Lightning components, put things like required equals true, all you're doing is telling the UI, put a red mark around it, and if it's blank, on Lightning input, if it's blank, put a message if someone leaves focus. That's all it does. Okay? So this was a bit of an eye-opener. If you're using the UI component library, it's even worse. You don't even get the red bits necessarily, you just get a star by the side. Okay? So let's see that in action. So got my first example here. So I've got a new contact form. Hopefully you can see that. Phone number, last name, first name are all mandatory. Okay. Doesn't do it very well, unfortunately. Okay. So all I'm going to put in is last name. Good. It said complete this field, first name, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put test in. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is I know that in the model behind, last name is mandatory. So if I don't do that, it won't save. I can click my bad save button. So this is just doing a save record on that. Well, the Zoom spoiled my demo, but contact saved, it works. What? Why is that? So if I use my good save, do the same example, this time, it shows me all the fields that need to be completed first. Okay? But if I put everything in, it works. Yay, that one worked. Okay, so why is that? So as I say, depending on the component library you use, if you use the UI input libraries, you need to get that handle on that component and set the errors with the message. You need to check the value yourself. Okay, nothing comes to you out of the box. You have to do it for each of the fields. There are some tricks you can use with Aura ID, giving lots of fields the same Aura ID, so you get an array of those and things. There are other things you can do. There's an article, C, validating fields, which you'll be able to access in the document, which will tell you some more information about that. But if you're using Lightning input, select text area, and hopefully some new components going forwards, all you have to do is get a handle to all those components and just do show help message if invalid. That's it, which is much easier. Then all the information you put in, all the validation, all the max digits, pattern, all that's applied for you, and you've only defined it once instead of having to do it in both halves. So that's just this in use. So here I've got my component controller. Instead of doing my save straight away, I've just put in front of it this helper validate form. And over here, the important line's in white. So I've got this show message if invalid. So that's going to find on all the contact fields, because I put the same order ID on them. Lesson 3, silent but deadly. Okay. Yeah, that is on purpose, that. So public examples rarely handle server errors. This was the other gotcha. The amount of code on Trailhead and Developer Force that says if state equals error, comment, do something. Thanks. Or console.log. So we all know how great it is. If you want your application to look great to a user, absolutely use console.log. You know what's broken, and no one else does. So let's have a look at that. So this time what I've done is a validation rule. And there's a validation rule on the email address to say you can't have an email address with a domain of no spam. So we saw this working just now. Okay, Richard at nospam.com. So this I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. Something's not working. I go into my developer tools. Now, I don't know how to zoom this one, but I can see in the console there's an error. It's actually clearer on there than on my screen. There's an error, and it's actually a custom field validation, or sorry, a custom validation exception. The other place I can see that, I said I was going to talk about the Lightning tab. If you've got the Lightning tab open and you do that, then normally you get a nice error in there. I don't know why I haven't got that this time. Because the debug is still running. There we go. And you can debug it in here and drill down and see what your problem is, which I'm not a big console fan. I think that's a lot easier to look at, even if you can't see it in the back of the room. So what's the next one? Okay. So I've got some more examples of that. So what I've got is 3 buttons here. Just zoom in on that one. Okay. I've got a DML error, server error, and a dupe error. If I don't do that error handling, then when I press these, nothing happens. If I switch on my error handling, I'm able to get that exception. I'm able to do something about it in my JavaScript, which we're going to talk about, and put a message up. And different messages. Internal server error. I must have broke Salesforce. We're going to talk about that as well. Or a dupe error. Okay. If I want to handle that properly, so here I've got my contact actually used for something real instead of just sitting in its own tab or test application. Okay. So I've got a proper message that time, being caught. So good, I'm happy with that. I'm telling people what to do. Now there are multiple ways of displaying error messages. We're going to talk about that next. So what does properly mean? So if you want to alert someone looking at your application, testing it, that there's a real error there, don't use console.log, use console.error. If you want to put messages out for your own purpose when there's an error, so you know what's happened, console.log's for that. Please don't use JavaScript alerts, okay? Not in Lightning. Then display something, that's the next lesson. And what you display is going to depend on things like the environment you're in. Are you on mobile? Are you in Classic? Are you in Lightning? Are you in Visual Force? All those things make a difference. When you do a callback, or even on the Lightning data service, there's a get state. That state has 4 states. Deal with all of them. Don't just deal with 2 of them. Or say, if it's success, this, else, error. Okay? They're quite important. Success, yeah, great. We all know that's green. It's worked. Woohoo! Draft, what does draft mean? Okay? So draft is when if you're using Lightning Data Service and there's a local cache, okay, it will return draft if it can save it to that local cache. So it has a copy of the record. It'll worry about the synchronization later. The draft will, and I know you're going to challenge this probably, whether it fails later or not because someone added another validation rule, all bets are off. But in theory, draft is a success condition. Error is obvious, so I've had an exception, I've got a problem in my code, something's come back from the server, it's failed, it could be a limit exception, it could be a Salesforce exception, it could be anything like that, it could be a field validation. And within that, there's a number of different states which we're going to talk about. The last one that people forget is incomplete. So you're working away in Lightning, you shut the lid on your laptop, rush to get the train, get home, open the lid, incomplete. Session's expired, that's all it is. So if you re-log in, hopefully you can then resubmit that form and it'll work. So we don't want to tell the person error every time. If it's incomplete, I might just want to say, reconnect and try again. Don't worry, don't panic. So panicking, I don't know about your experiences, but I find if someone sees something like this, there's three things they might do. Some people reboot their machine. Okay, you've seen that quite, you're laughing, we've all done it. Some people call the help desk. Some people just try it again and again and again, hoping eventually it's going to work. Okay, I liken this to, let's put my volume up.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, no, Will Robinson. Danger.
Okay, we don't really want to do that to people. We want to give them nice, friendly messages. We want to give them a nice bit of toast, for example, whether it's a success, a warning, an error, or some info. Let's do it nice, let's do it consistently. And let's make it look like how Salesforce deals with it as well, if you're running in Salesforce. If you're running your own application outside of a Lightning design system, absolutely use a different way to render things. So you can do certain things. If you do in your JavaScript, a throw new error, you'll get the first thing, the danger Will Robinson come up, okay? It's a fun trick to play on someone if they're doing some code. Pop that in when they're not looking, you come back, test their new component. Whoa, what's happened? Spent hours trying to find it. You can use console.log, console.error. They have a purpose, as you saw. It's very quick for me to see, especially when it's in red, something in the console. You also find a lot of examples using UI output text. So typically in the component, you'll see something like an or if errors, meaning that if there's anything in the errors, then display all the contents of that if. So the output text would then be what your errors are you want to display. So it's often displayed in line. It's like a validation message in line. Similar to that, UI message. So we're going to do some demos of all these. UI message is useful because it works in both Visualforce and Lightning. I know you can have Visualforce and Lightning, but if you'd use the next two, the show and toast, that won't work if you're inside a Visualforce page, whether you're in Lightning or Classic. So show toast is what I just had on the previous screen, those little messages that pop up that stack. They stack like toast, maybe that's why they called it that. More like in my house, they disappear like toast as well. So.
They pop up like toast.
And pop up like toast.
They pop up.
And stack, there's so many reasons. so many puns. The Lightning notifications library is what I prefer to use, rather than having lots of $A's everywhere. Every time I see a $A, I go, what's that going to do? So Lightning notifications library will do something similar, so you can choose to have notices or toast in there, and again I'm going to show you some examples of both. But it's just, for me, a neater way of doing things and handling things within Lightning. And in Spring 18, a couple of weeks ago, after I just sent Anoop the summary of this talk, I read another blog post about Spring 18, and it was about the record edit form or whatever, and it had this component I've never seen before, Lightning messages. So I went to the Aura docs for it, nothing. I went in the Spring 18 stuff, nothing. I went on the org into the component reference, nothing. But I've got some examples of that. So something is coming which hopefully will be as good as the Apex page messages that the Visualforce developers know and love. Life isn't that easy anymore with Lightning, unfortunately, not yet. So with this, you need to think about your desktop and mobile experience, what's appropriate to show to users. You need to think about whether you're going to show one message for every error, or whether you're going to concatenate your errors together. So just think about that, and there's no reason you can't handle both. So you can say, if it's mobile, I'll do this. If it's desktop, I'll do that. Okay. So let's have a quick look at the toast. So here I've just got a simple drop down with my different errors I want to test. So here's my unhandled error, my Will Robinson. Okay, danger, Will Robinson, danger. Here's my notice. So notice is quite interesting because it's modal. Most of those things like toast aren't modal. You can still do other things. They sit on the page, they sit on top. But I can't do anything else when I'm having this impending attack by mutant zombies. Okay. So if you want to force someone to take notice, so I use this on the incomplete status with a grey box instead of a red one, just so they acknowledge that you've got to do something, restore your network connection, or log back into Salesforce before you carry on. And there's an alert. Now the reason I put that in, you could do the same thing that way. Again, what users do when they see that, what do they focus on? They focus on the OK button, always. I had an error. What did you do? I pressed OK. What did it say? I don't know. Take a screenshot? No. Didn't it's important. And of course, the other thing is that's going to be very interesting when you run that in Salesforce 1. So I think it doesn't appear. Sorry, Salesforce Mobile is that called? We've got our errors, toasts, dropping down rather than popping up. Depends on your, especially from Australia, maybe it is popping up. And here's my UI message. UI message is quite nice. The pastel colours work really well on the screen. So again, different types of warning. It does look very much more like something you'd see in Classic. And it does serve that purpose. You can probably restyle this. There's probably some CSS experts in the room that can tell me how to do that. I'm going with toast for now. On the left is using show toast, so I just get a result, $aura.get, the event for show toast, set some parameters on it, I type in the message, and then just fire that event. Quite easy. Why am I worried? Well, if I use the notifications library, I put one tag into my component, and I call one line, so that's going to find all the contact fields, because I put the same Aura ID on there. Lesson 3, silent but deadly. Okay. Yeah, that is on purpose, that. So public examples rarely handle server errors. This was the other gotcha. The amount of code on Trailhead and Develop the Force that says if state equals error, comment, do something. Haha, thanks. Or console.log. So we all know how great it is. If you want your application to look great to a user, absolutely use console.log. You know what's broken, no one else does. So let's have a look at that. So this time what I've done is a validation rule. And there's a validation rule on the email address. So you can't have an email address with a domain of no spam. So we saw this working just now. Okay, Richard at nospam.com. So this I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. Save it. Something's not working. Go into my developer tools. Now, I don't know how to zoom this one, but I can see in the console there's an error. That's actually clearer on there than on my screen. There's an error, and it's actually a custom field validation, or sorry, a custom validation exception. The other place I can see that, I said I was going to talk about the Lightning tab. If you've got the Lightning tab open and you do that, then normally you get a nice error in there. Don't know why I haven't got that this time. Oh, because the debug is still running. There we go. And you can debug it in here, drill down and see what your problem is, which I'm not a big console fan. I think that's a lot easier to look at, even if you can't see it at the back of the room. So what's the next one? Okay. So I've got some more examples of that. So what I've got is 3 buttons here. Just zoom in that one. Okay. I've got a DML error, a server error, and a dupe error. If I don't do that error handling, then when I press these, nothing happens. If I switch on my error handling, I'm able to get that exception. I'm able to do something about it in my JavaScript, which we're going to talk about, and put a message up. Different messages, internal server error. I must have broke Salesforce. We're going to talk about that as well. Or a dupe error. Okay. if I want to handle that properly, so here I've got my contact actually used for something real instead of just sitting in its own tab or test application. Okay. So I've got a proper message that time, big core. So good, I'm happy with that. I'm telling people what to do. Now there are multiple ways of displaying error messages. We're going to talk about that next. So what does properly mean? So if you want to alert someone looking at your application, testing it, that there's a real error there, don't use console.log, use console.error. If you want to put messages out for your own purpose when there's an error, so you know what's happened, console.log's for that. Please don't use JavaScript alerts, okay? Not in Lightning. Then display something, that's the next lesson. And what you display is going to depend on things like the environment you're in. Are you on mobile? Are you in Classic? Are you in Lightning? Are you in Visual Force? All those things make a difference. When you do a callback, or even on the Lightning data service, there's a get state. That state has 4 states. Deal with all of them. Don't just deal with 2 of them. We'll say, if it's success, this, else, error. Okay? They're quite important. Success, yeah, great. We all know that's green. It's worked. Woohoo! Draft, what does draft mean? Okay? So draft is when if you're using Lightning data service and there's a local cache, okay, it will return draft if it can save it to that local cache. So it has a copy of the record. It'll worry about the synchronization later. The draft will, and I know you're going to challenge this probably, whether it fails later or not because someone added another validation rule, all bets are off. But in theory, draft is a success condition. Error is obvious, so I've had an exception, I've got a problem in my code, something's come back from the server, it's failed, it could be a limit exception, it could be a Salesforce exception, it could be anything like that, it could be a field validation. And within that, there's a number of different states which we're going to talk about. The last one that people forget is incomplete. So you're working away in Lightning, you shut the lid on your laptop, rush to get the train, get home, open the lid, oh, incomplete. Session's expired, that's all it is. So if you re-log in, hopefully you can then resubmit that form and it'll work. So we don't want to tell the person error every time. If it's incomplete, I might just want to say, reconnect and try again. Don't worry, don't panic. So panicking, I don't know about your experiences, but I find if someone sees something like this, there's 3 things they might do. Some people reboot their machine. Okay, you've seen that quite, you're laughing, we've all seen it. Some people call the help desk. Some people just try it again and again and again, hoping eventually it's going to work. Okay, I liken this to, let's put my volume up.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, no, Will Robinson. Danger.
Okay, we don't really want to do that to people. We want to give them nice, friendly messages. We want to give them a nice bit of toast, for example, whether it's a success, a warning, an error, or some info. Let's do it nice, let's do it consistently. And let's make it look like how Salesforce deals with it as well, if you're running in Salesforce. If you're running your own application outside of a Lightning design system, absolutely use a different way to render things. So you can do certain things. If you do in your JavaScript a throw new error, you'll get the first thing, the danger Will Robinson come up, okay? It's a fun trick to play on someone if they're doing some code, pop that in when they're not looking, you come back, test the new component, whoa, what's happened? Spent hours trying to find it. You can use console.log, console.error, they have a purpose, as you saw, it's very quick for me to see, especially when it's in red, something in the console. You also find a lot of examples using UI output text, so typically in the component you'll see something like an or if errors, meaning that if there's anything in the errors, then display all the contents of that if. So the output text would then be what your errors are you want to display. So it's often displayed in line. It's like a validation message in line. Similar to that, UI message. So we're going to do some demos of all these. UI message is useful because it works in both Visual Force and Lightning. I know you can have Visual Force and Lightning, but if you'd use the next two, the show and toast, that won't work if you're inside a Visual Force page, whether you're in Lightning or Classic. So show toast is what I just had on the previous screen, those little messages that pop up that stack. They stack like toast, maybe that's why they called it that. More like in my house, they disappear like toast as well. So.
They pop up like toast.
And pop up like toast.
They pop
Lightning stack. There's so many reasons. so many puns. The Lightning notifications library is what I prefer to use, rather than having lots of $A's everywhere. Every time I see a $A, I go, what's that going to do? So Lightning notifications library will do something similar. So you can choose to have notices or toast in there. And again, I'm going to show you some examples of both. But it's just, for me, a neater way of doing things and handling things within Lightning. And in Spring 18, a couple of weeks ago, after I just sent Anoop the summary of this talk, I read another blog post about Spring 18, and it was about the record edit form or whatever. And it had this component I've never seen before, Lightning messages. So I went to the Aura docs for it, nothing. I went in the Spring 18 stuff, nothing. I went on the org into the component reference, nothing. But I've got some examples of that. So something is coming, which hopefully will be as good as the Apex page messages that the Visual Force developers know and love. Life isn't that easy anymore with Lightning, unfortunately, not yet. So with this, you need to think about your desktop and mobile experience, what's appropriate to show to users. You need to think about whether you're going to show one message for every error, or whether you're going to concatenate your errors together. So just think about that, and there's no reason you can't handle both. So you can say, if it's mobile, I'll do this. If it's desktop, I'll do that. Okay. So let's have a quick look at the toast. So here I've just got a simple drop down with my different errors I want to test. So here's my unhandled error, my Will Robinson. Okay, danger, Will Robinson, danger. Here's my notice. So notice is quite interesting because it's modal. Most of those things like toast aren't modal. You can still do other things. They sit on the page, they sit on top. But I can't do anything else when I'm having this impending attack by mutant zombies. Okay. So if you want to force someone to take notice, so I use this on the incomplete status with a grey box instead of a red one, just so they acknowledge that you've got to do something, restore your network connection, or log back into Salesforce before you carry on. And there's an alert. And the reason I put that in, you could do the same thing that way. Again, what users do when they see that, what do they focus on? They focus on the OK button, always. I had an error. What did you do? I pressed OK. What did it say? I don't know. Take a screenshot? No. Didn't it's important. And of course, the other thing is that's going to be very interesting when you run that in Salesforce 1. So I think it doesn't appear. Sorry, Salesforce Mobile is that called. We've got our errors, toasts, dropping down rather than popping up. Depends on your, especially from Australia, maybe it is popping up. And here's my UI message. UI message is quite nice. The pastel colours work really well on the screen. So again, different types of warning. It does look very much more like something you'd see in Classic. And it does serve that purpose. You can probably restyle this. There's probably some CSS experts in the room that can tell me how to do that. I'm going with toast for now. On the left is using show toast, so I just get the results, $aura.get the event for show toast, set some parameters on it, I type in the message, and then just fire that event. Quite easy. Why am I worried? Well, if I use the notifications library, I put one tag into my component, and I call one line in my JavaScript. I'm a lazy programmer. The less code I have to type, or the less code I have to cut and paste, the better. Okay. Too many people are nodding at that. So just quickly on the Lightning messages, I've had a quick play in the pre-release and in the sandboxes with this. So new, nice simple tag to use, Lightning messages, bang. Don't know what attributes it has because there's no documentation for it. So there's probably some great attributes, but right now that's what it does. It wasn't in release notes. If you do /component reference sweet app, does everyone know that? What I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah? Just a few shakes I can do that. So within your org.
So just a quick question on the Lightning message. So you said it's only, but you've only seen it in examples, but it's not documented.
And it's Spring 18 only. So I've seen it used in other examples, but there's no Aura doc for it.
There's no Aura doc, so can we still use it? Or?
It worked for me, but hopefully it'll get sorted in the next 2 weeks. So within here, you can look at all the Lightning components and get to the doc for the different things you're interested in. So normally I'd come into here and say, okay, how to use an input field, okay? And there I go, nice example, great, much better than searching the internet to find some random examples that don't work. And they often also have some kind of JavaScript with it, but that's the sort of thing you've got. But within there, there's nothing for Lightning messages on a Spring 18.
Have you tried manually putting it in the URL bar, just in case it's not on the side menu but does exist?
I assume there's no, well, it's like if you do custom components, there's no, or if you don't press the docs button, it feels like no one's pressed that button and put any stubs in or anything. So I'm assuming if it works, I don't believe they hide it on purpose. But no, I haven't tried that. But it does avoid silent failures. If you put a Lightning messages in your page from Spring 18 and you get those silent errors, they're not silent anymore, so that's really good. You'll know when you're developing, no QA person's going to find a bug in your code. So it doesn't actually tell you what the message is, though, which is a shame. That could be just the example I've used of Lightning Data Service. So here we've got an issue here. So I've got a validation rule on here where I don't like being called Ricardo. So anyone that tries to create me a contact of Ricardo Clark, go away. But that's what it says. I've got an error. So I thought I'll debug it. What does it say in the error object? It says I've got an error. So this might just be a problem with the component I'm using here, which is, for those of you that don't like writing code, where's my JavaScript? Wow. It's starting to look a lot like Visual Force, isn't it, Lightning? Spring 18. You can start doing things like this. So that's looking cool. Not very good for error handling, though. So keep an eye on it. Let's see where it goes. Lightning out. If you're creating components for Lightning out, Visual Force, UI validation works the same, so that's great. All the red lines, all the boxes, please complete this field, but you can't use the show toast. Okay, it doesn't work at all. In that case, you have to use the output text or UI message or your own custom component for that. Make your error handling environmentally friendly. Sorry to do a pun on that one as well. There's a good article on the Lightning design system, what and why, Lightning messaging overview. I went to this thinking it was all about the new event messaging stuff. It wasn't. It's just about notices and messages in Lightning. And Keir did a good blog 2 years ago now, okay, with some nice little tricks on things like, actually, I can't show toast. I can actually use that to detect if I'm running within a place where I can show it. Quite simple, I didn't think of that. So some nice little tricks. Hopefully there's a better way of doing it now, but as a starting point, that was a good resource. Thank you, Keir. Quick recap, we've talked about UI validation, duplicate rules, data model validation rules. We briefly talked about some of the exceptions. So what I want to talk about now is handling those exceptions in a better way. How can we make them more meaningful? How do we get rid of that internal server error? So I now believe whenever I see an internal server error in Salesforce, it's either my code, after doing this, or it's something in someone else's code at Salesforce, but I no longer believe it's the old resin errors you used to get in the stack traces yesteryear we used to see. It's no longer as critical as I thought it was. So there's 3 places to check. So when you go into your developer console, you navigate through the tree or use the Lightning inspector, there's 3 main areas you may see errors. You need to check them all. You can't just check one of them and think you've got everything. So in page errors, you'll see apex exceptions, usually only one. You'll also see dupe rule warnings as well, will come up in there. For some reason, I'm not seeing any other content like what are the other dupes, so I've probably got to do something in my code to get a handle on all those and display them in a better way. It just tells me, yeah, there's potentially some duplicates. Also, if you've got a validation rule and you've said top of page, okay, it comes up in page errors. Okay, makes sense. But if you put it on the field level, it comes up in field errors, and then you get all your multiple ones come up. So field errors, you often get a list of different ones. You need to iterate through and message all of those. Don't just pick the first one. And potential duplicates to say, I haven't got something working with that yet. I can see there is one, but I haven't got a very good message for it. How you display them will depend on what sort of error it is. So to save me scrolling through in developer tools, here I've got it's a Lightning data service going to save. I've got my result for that. I found there's an error. Okay, I've done a good old console log. Yeah, it's not my code. It's an example I pulled down. Okay, it's classic. But if I look and try and debug it, what I find is there's something in the field errors object. It's the email field, and there's a real message there. So I could have done something about it. Okay, it's visible to me. So how do we handle these? Or a handled exception. So if I've got a Lightning component, it's got an Apex controller, so you can make calls back to it like JavaScript promoting. If I've got in that code, classic piece of code of mine, account A equals new account, insert A. Hopefully everyone knows that's bollocks, so it's not going to work. Whoops, I broke Salesforce. That's what I'm using to get that internal server error. I haven't really broken anything. Okay. What I haven't done is handle the error. So if I catch that, an exception, and raise and throw or a handle exception, I start to see what's really wrong. Now you may want to panic your users with an internal server error, or you may want to swallow it and not tell anyone it happened. That's up to you. But I'd recommend handling it. Some weird things happen when you do, though. So within my great example here, remember we had this with the buttons. Okay? So all that is my JavaScript handler. Remember before we were getting these different messages, including our internal server error. But for example, our DML error was quite nice. Required fields missing account name. I can understand that as an end user. That's all right. We don't have to do anything with that, and that's coming out not handling the exception. If I switch my exception handling on, okay, I know I've got no pointer exception now, or I do. The user tells me that, I know what I'm looking for if I want to show it to them. Of course, I could handle that myself. I could catch that and say, oops, I buggered up. Please give this reference and contact the help desk. And the bit about your admin already knows about this is me just deflecting calls. Okay, so it's not real. But if I do that with my DML error, I get a horrible red bar, and I get all this nasty, all this Will Robinson stuff come up. Okay? All the stuff I don't want to see. So my choices are either to parse that out, or just treat your exceptions differently. Okay? So what I've been doing is, if it's a DML exception, I throw a DML exception. I push that up, say, yeah, you know what you're doing. You've got an admin's put all the effort in to put a nice error message in. I'm going to give them that error message. I'm not going to try and change it. If it's anything else, I'll throw in or a handled exception. What you'll also see with your handled exception is in your debug logs or developer console, you'll see internal server errors, internal server screen, but you'll see a script error or something in the log as well. So there's a way of getting around that. If you use, so we'll go back to the example. When you put text in here, this is what the user sees on the constructor. So don't put Mickey Mouse text in there, okay? That's going to get back to the user. When you put something on set message, that's going to your logs. So that's where you can put all the techie stuff, all the version numbers, anything else you want to throw in there that's useful to you as a developer, that's where you throw that information. Okay, final lesson. I'm nearly finished, look at that. So, if you've got this to do in every one of your Lightning components, simple answer is it's a component framework, so guess what? Write a component to handle it. So write one error component, so you have consistency across your application how you deal with those errors. You can start small and you can make it more complex as you go, but at least if you start building your components that way, you don't have the task I've got, which is going back 30 components I've written and now plugging it all in at the late stage. Each one's handling it differently. So you've got single point of change. It's very easy to implement. There are a few gotchas you need to watch out for. There is an interesting article. So Shane McLaughlin's done an article. He's done some code on GitHub you can look at with a Lightning error handler. You can just download and install to your org. That's what I did. And then I changed it because I didn't want the same user experience. Okay, but it's all there that you can get at. And he even tells you how to use it. Okay. If you are also writing components, remember that if you're doing something, you've got a multilingual environment, you need to think about custom labels. So $a.get, you can get the label names, get the values out for your users. So the example I gave in the exception, when I create an exception, I'll probably use something, I want to use my label, I want to translate that quite often. But what I want to put in my log is the English, if I'm in an English support team, so I can understand what the hell happened. Okay. If you're using a managed package, obviously you need to put the namespace in there as well. So what does the end result look like? So here I've got something a bit more useful. I'm going to sit down for this one. So within my opportunity page here, I've added a Lightning component. It's my good old product selector one that I wrote years ago in Visualforce, where you've got different products, etc. You can change the quantities, all in the page, just save it, do my updates really quickly. I've got my messages popping up at the top. If I put stupid quantities in, okay, it's not a very nice message, range overflow, for those at the back, there's plenty of seats at the front. But at least I know it's custom. Okay. And if I change the unit price, it found a bug. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't actually write this. One of the Salesforce trainers wrote this for me so I could get started. And I was very pleased to find when I added error handling to his code that it had a problem. It was using Lightning data service and both unit price and total price were going back to the server. So it's a classic Salesforce gotcha. Anyone that's started working Sales Cloud, you only update one of those fields, not both at once. But through this, I was able to find that bug. I didn't know why it wasn't saving. So, quick summary. Learn to debug Lightning. Really important. Do it at the start, not at the end like I did. The refresh, the trick that we heard just now, is a great one. Hopefully that's caught up on the microphone. I'll be able to play that back. Or what I do is just mark up the page. The markup changes style. The two-step UI validation. Remember, if it's input or if it's UI input or if it's Lightning, you need to handle it differently. Make sure you handle all four of those callback states. The Aura handled exception for Apex code and triggers, and a custom component. So make it environment aware, make it multi-component aware as well. So if you've got a reusable component, you don't want everything flashing up the same error at once. Okay? So if you're using an event to fire, to propagate, make sure it's targeted to only one of those components at once, or have a central place where it's caught in your Apex page, in your Lightning page, and in your app page where you want to display your messages. Use custom labels and don't be afraid to start small, get something working, and then you can always improve it as you go on. And Lightning messages, we'll see where that takes us. The bit I dread. Any more questions? No? Damn it! From the JavaScript expert as well.
No, do you think there's space then for a standard base error handling component?
Yeah, I think as a community we could write a good one together. I want to see more about Lightning messages and where that's going. So I want to sort of get to some product managers and say, hey, what's this? What are you doing with this?
Yeah.
Is this Apex page messages we've all been waiting for? Or not? But you're still going to have to do something, you're right, and it's going to depend on your application what you want to do. So, good example, one of my last minute things I did, is if you're working in, zoom out, what happens when you're in mobile? So if I change, an iPhone, great stuff, got my messages on, do I still want these messages to appear like this? Do I still think that's appropriate? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, okay? The other one I forgot to show was what happens when I lose my network. I should, maybe I have to move a bit, wiggle it. Okay. Oh, that's stupid. Why did I do that? Okay, so what it does is Lightning does detect when you're offline and it puts a network error grey box on. A lot of people use mobile and Salesforce One have been getting that a lot. Okay, every few seconds, network error, network error, network error. So when I said about incomplete, it's also important to be aware that it may be handled for you in a way that's acceptable. Okay, so I just want to make that point.
Quite often see it in the Lightning experience as well.
Sorry?
Quite often see it in the Lightning experience when you refresh a page too quickly for it.
Yeah.
Tells you you're offline, checking connection.
Exactly.
You
So
I just retweeted that tip around the deleting of the index DB under the hashtag for tonight.
thank you very much. So if there's any more, I'll hand over to our sponsors for a quick word. Thank you very much.